was one of those beautiful winter days in December. The sun was out. I'm in a bathing suit. It was so warm.
Right here. Oh no, that's not it. I think we already passed it, but it was on this side.
Right there? It's 24 hours.
No, it says 24 hours on the window. I think we already passed it. That was a recap back in 2011. November 2011 specifically was my very first time visiting here in Asia. And I decided to visit Singapore as my very first Asian country. And while being in Singapore for a month, I decided to visit Thailand for the month of December. So now you're probably wondering what made me decide to visit Thailand. Well, it was two reasons. The first reason was, well, if you haven't visited Singapore before, it's one of the most expensive Asian countries in the continent of Asia. And I didn't realize this until after being here for a month. Now, Singapore isn't as expensive as in the US, Canada, or some European countries. But like I mentioned, for an Asian country, it's expensive. So I decided to visit Thailand, really based on the movie Hangover Part 2. This movie right here. Now, if you've never seen this movie before, you should try and check it out. It's a very funny comedy movie. And it came out during the earlier part of 2011. I just found it hilarious. It was based in Thailand. And it was during a time when the US actually made good movies. So it's a really funny movie. Second reason was because I had met some friends online during this time, 2011. MySpace was on a decline and Facebook was becoming more popular. And I had met a lot of people on MySpace. And before that, I was using a site called Black Planet, in which I met a lot of friends also here in Singapore and Thailand. So those are basically my two reasons. Number one, it was becoming very expensive in Singapore. Number two, I wanted to at least visit another country while I was in Southeast Asia and don't spend all my time in one country, which was Singapore, and try out a new country. And that new country was Thailand. And it was solely based on the movie and also based on the amount of people that I had met online before visiting the country. Those were the good old days when people actually didn't Photoshop their photos. They didn't use any type of software that will alter their looks. So whoever you met actually looked like the photos they posted on these sites. Black Planet, I think, was probably the first online type of, I guess you can call it a dating site, because I think it came out in 1999. So I didn't catch that site until like maybe the tail end when it was on a decline, and what was on the rise was MySpace. So this was the most popular site after blackplanet.com was MySpace. And basically these two sites I used to actually meet people, not even just in my own country, but also abroad to other countries that I had visited. Now, my first impressions, it always starts at the airport. So when I first landed and arrived in Bangkok, I was expecting to be lost because I knew that unlike Singapore, which English is basically like the main language, I knew there was going to be some type of language barrier in Thailand since the main language is Thai. but my assumption was incorrect. Going through customs and immigration was a breeze. Everything was in order. They had signs in their language and also in English. So it wasn't like how I expected to be. And also, even after visiting for my first time, visiting other times, it was the same. It was a breeze. It seems like when you arrive in Bangkok airport, their whole goal is to get you through as fast as they can, because sometimes I remember when I visited, it was no interaction at all. It was like a stamp and, get out of here, go, have fun. And also, this is when I learned, because around this time I already had visited a good handful of countries. So I had visited Canada as my first international country. Really, I don't really count it since it's next door. I can drive there. It takes me 9 hours. But Canada was my first international country. Then after Canada was Brazil. After Brazil was Colombia. After Colombia was right here in Southeast Asia, Singapore and Thailand. And I noticed from visiting those countries, you'll find a lot of people at the airport, they're bilingual. So they speak their own language and English. But my problem was, once you leave the airport, if it's not an English speaking country, that's when you're gonna have a problem. And that was my first interaction here. After leaving the airport, when getting a taxi, that's when the language barrier kind of kicked in. But it wasn't so much of a problem because I was thinking ahead. So what I had did before I visited Thailand is, in Singapore, from my hotel, I printed out my stay where I was staying at and my whole itinerary for being in Thailand for a month. So once I got into the taxi, I just basically just showed them my printed out itinerary of where I was staying, and it was all good from there. Now, from using those two sites that I mentioned earlier, blackplanet.com and myspace.com, like I said, I had befriended a lot of people. So the first person that I met, she actually worked and lived in Bangkok, and she's the one who had suggested the place where I stayed at. The only problem I had with the place is that it was really far from everything. So the MBK Center was very far from where I was staying. It was like I was in the middle of nowhere, but I guess it was kind of close to where she lived and her job, and maybe that was the reason why she picked out this place for me. So once I started approaching the area of this hotel, I saw lots of restaurants, which was a plus. That's always a good sign. And once I got inside the hotel, it was very nice, very clean. The whole style of the hotel at that time was like, wow, this is like very different than from what I'm seeing when I visit Brazil or Colombia. And the person that checked me in, up to this day, we're still friends on Facebook. And he was very helpful, being my first time in Thailand. And he's from the Philippines. Now he has a kid and family and everything, different job, but we're still friends to this day. So since the flight is not a long flight, because Thailand is not very far from Singapore, I just immediately, I took a shower, got comfortable. And at this time, people are not really using cell phones like that. So the means of communication is through these sites, blackplanet.com and MySpace. So I contacted her, I messaged her, told her I was here, and within a few hours, she showed up. So here's my room. Here's a little tour of my room back then. And around this time in 2011, a room like this, I had never seen the layout of this kind of room. Mainly because of how the bathroom looks. There was like a little sliding type of door. So if somebody's out in the bedroom quarters or living room quarters, if you have the sliding door pushed a certain way, you can actually see the person take a shower. I never had seen anything like that before when I had visited Colombia or Brazil or even in Canada. So I was like, wow, this is kind of unique. It's something different. But the room was a very basic room, the bed, you have a little mini refrigerator, flat screen TV, a balcony. And outside the balcony, it's like your view is of nothing. Because like I mentioned, I was in the middle of nowhere. And as a gift, she brought me 2 bags of chips. One was mango chips, which I had never heard of or had before, and the second one was durian chips. Now, through messages, she kept talking about, you gotta try durian, you gotta try durian. It's good, it's good. So she brought me the chips, and both the mango chips and the durian chips kind of almost tasted the same. Just the mango chips was a little bit sweeter, but they were very salty. And with the durian chips at the time, I didn't really smell any kind of funk coming from these durian chips. Because if you don't know, durian, the fruit, has like a pungent, sour, fart type of smell that some people like the fruit and some people don't. Myself, I don't like durian, the fruit. But the chips, ice cream is okay. But the actual fruit, I can't get over the smell and the texture. But I'll get more into that when she actually got me durian fruit to test. So now you're probably wondering, well, how was the language barrier with her? Or how did y'all communicate through these 2 sites if she didn't speak or know English? Well, I was lucky because all the people I met on these 2 sites, they spoke English, maybe not American English, not British English, but their version of English and their accents. So with her, perfect English. The only thing that's funny, even up to this day, because we're still friends also, her English is kind of like almost Caribbean, like she's Jamaican. It's like she has a Jamaican type of English accent. And no one else I had met had the same kind of English accent as her. After trying the chips and talking a little bit, we headed out, and right in front of the hotel was a restaurant. And my very first Thai dish was a tom yum soup with shrimp. And back then, this was my number one dish to go to. It's like hot and sour, and it's very spicy. And that's when Thai foods became my favorite Asian dishes to try or to eat because of the spice. I love spice, and evidently most Thai people love very spicy and hot foods. After this, we took the metro system to the MBK Center and arrived there while it was getting dark because we spent most of the day near my hotel. And what surprised me about Bangkok was that when I compared the amount of vendors and just people in general that knew some English or they spoke English versus when I visited South America, where that majority of people, they don't speak English, that was surprising. You would think because English, Spanish, Portuguese, we all share the same alphabets, A through Z, along with other Romance languages like French or Romanian. They all have A through Z. So the only big difference would be the pronunciation of different words. But if you know the alphabet system, if you speak these languages, it's really not that hard to learn each other's language. So when you come to a whole different continent like Asia and you look at some of their words, you really can't make out what it means. It just looks like art. But when you look at Spanish or Portuguese words, some of the words are similar to the English language, and some of them are even spelt kind of similar. So that was the number one big surprise of the language. I already knew that I was going to face some type of language barrier, in which I did, but not as much as when you go to South America. And next, what surprised me was entering inside the MBK Center. This was the first time I ever seen a mall this big with as many stores that they had inside. Also, I never seen a mall that on top of selling regular authentic goods, I saw fake goods or knockoffs of original items, and I had never seen that before in any country I had visited. And something else that surprised me, before it got too late, we decided to catch a movie. So this was my first time going to a movie theater, not just in Thailand, but just in Asia at this time in general. And what actually surprised me about this was that once the movie started, I saw people rise and getting up, and I was thinking, we just got here, and why is people fighting already? And I learned from right there that it was nobody fighting, but it's just something that they do to honor the king. Everybody stands up. From there, we went to a section in Bangkok where I saw a lot of foreigners, a lot of tourists, and that was my first time trying insects, bugs. So it was like an assortment bag of like fried and dried scorpions, some type of worms, just insects in general. I didn't want to do it, but she bought this for me, so I'm thinking, well, this is part of maybe her culture, so let me go ahead and not be rude and try it, and maybe I might like it. Now, it didn't taste bad. It tastes like, I guess, like salted potato chips. You know, it all tasted the same, even though it was different insects. But the funny thing about that is that she got it for me. Herself, she didn't like it. She never tried it before. It's just not her thing. So that was kind of funny. And I did not get sick, but I never tried that again. After that, we went to a Muay Thai fighting match.
Unported. ครับแดงแคนาดานะครับน้ำเงินไทยนะครับทีเหล็กกับโคตี้นะครับดูดีๆนะครับอย่างกับพริกกาวเด็ดขาดคู่นี้80 กิโลกรัมครับ
So I was very surprised how the layout is in Bangkok and how also it's bad traffic in Bangkok. So I was surprised about that. I had never seen traffic like in Bangkok than I have seen anywhere in the world that I have visited. It's worse than California traffic. It's way worse than New York traffic. And the difficulty that I had was crossing streets, especially near or around the MBK Center. It's like almost impossible, especially if it's a certain time of day. It's hard to cross the streets. And I'll never forget, just about when I thought the night was going to come to an end and we was heading back to my area, before we caught the metro, we saw a stand, and guess what the stand was selling? Hanging durian fruit. So I had forgotten all about that she wanted me to try it out. But they had it chopped up in these little baggies, and that was my first time actually trying the fruit. And like I expected, I did not like it. It's like some type of custard texture that's gooey, and it actually, to me, tasted the way it smelled. So I had half a piece, I had to spit that out, and she finished the rest. If you ever tempted to try durian fruit, or if you like durian fruit, leave a comment below. The more I visited Thailand, the more I encountered what the country is known for, and that is the land of smiles. And it's something that might surprise you if you have never visited before. When you reserve a hotel or go to certain places in Thailand, the friendly and hospitable nature of Thai people might surprise you.